Hello and welcome to The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. Ady Barkan, known as Ady, was an American lawyer and a social justice activist. He co-founded the progressive anti-special interest PAC, Be a Hero, and was a powerful organizer promoting policies that help America's workers. He was a champion of healthcare for all, but was an especially vocal advocate for low-income, elderly, and disabled populations. He ended up as a member of that last group after having been diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, in 2016. Joining us now to talk about Ady's life, impact, and influence is Nick Bruckman, the director of Not Going Quietly, a documentary about Ady's life and work. Nick, thanks for coming on The Excerpt.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So Ady Barkan died last month of ALS at the age of 39. You directed the documentary about him a couple of years ago, though. What was it about him that made you want to make an entire film about this man?
Sure. So I met Ady in 2018, right after he had confronted Senator Jeff Flake about his health care on an airplane. And the woman next to him had captured this short clip of him confronting the senator about his story and about his son, and how he would explain, Senator Flake, to his son why he was voting against healthcare. And this clip and conversation was so powerful that it went viral before the plane even landed. And for me as a storyteller, that short clip and the influence it had was a microcosm or a metaphor for the power all of our stories had. And that's what I think Ady's message is. Our personal stories have power if we only have the courage to share them. Yeah, and for that reason, I knew there was a film to be made about him. I never could have imagined where the story would go from there or what kind of an influence Ady would have over the next few years of his life.
Well, in 2019, Ady was called the most powerful activist in America by Politico. In 2020, he was on Time Magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. Both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders wrote blurbs for his memoir. Why do you think Ady was able to galvanize so much attention and support?
It's important to remember that Ady was an incredible activist for over a decade before he was diagnosed with ALS. He had fought fights across issues from securing minimum wage in New York to bringing activists to protest the Federal Reserve, which was an idea that he had and really no organizer had ever done before. But it was only when he was diagnosed with ALS that he realized his own story could be the one that would told and influence people. And I think when you met Ady and you knew about how little time he had left, it forced you to look inward and look at yourself and how you're spending your time and how you're living your life. And if Ady could do it, so can you. And so I think Ady called all of us into moral clarity, whether that be an activist that he met on the road or even a politician like Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. I watched and filmed Ady as he interviewed all of the presidential candidates in the lead up to the 2020 election. And I saw that all of the candidates couldn't give him their traditional stump speeches. They really had to look at him, face their own mortality, face their own morals, their own vision, and tell Ady the truth about what they were going to do for sick people like them. Everybody has a healthcare story. And I think when they look at Ady, they all know that their story could be his or could be a sibling or a family member. I'm 39 as well, and I could be in that position too. And I think what Ady asked us is, what do we do with the cards we're dealt? How do we use them to make a better world?
And this incredible chemistry that he had in his interactions with everyone. Tell me about what you saw with his interactions with ordinary people.
Ady had this incredibly powerful effect on everybody he met. That includes me. When I met him, I basically dropped everything I was doing. And I said, how can I document it? About 2 months after meeting him, I found myself in an RV traveling across the country for 6 weeks with him from California to Maine, documenting Ady organizing people and bringing them to confront their political representatives, just the way he had with Jeff Flake. He said, I'm going to take people in their wheelchairs with their crutches to the congressional offices or wherever we can find them to eliminate that distance between the represented and the representatives. He called it bird dogging. And he would capture these clips on cell phone video. Of course, I was filming with my big camera. And these clips would have incredible impact because it showed the people who watched them that sick people, disabled people, older people were willing to stand up. It's harder for them to organize, but Ady was doing it, and they were doing it too. And it forced the politicians to speak to their constituency directly about this issue. And as this, every city we would go in, more and more people would show up. And it was this incredible grassroots movement that led him all the way to Washington, D.C., to the steps of the Capitol and into the offices of Bernie Sanders, of Pelosi, of Jayapal, of Kamala, and ultimately Biden himself. And I think Ady really had what I would say was almost a spiritual effect on people. Of course, that was his tactic. He didn't see it that way, but it forced people to look at their own lives and say, what's my excuse? If Ady can do it, so can I. And I think that applied to everyday people who were inspired by him and wanted to join his movement and still are today, all the way to the most powerful elected officials in Washington.
Okay, so let's talk about Ady's activism with healthcare specifically. Ady was quite active on that issue years before he was diagnosed with ALS. Why was he so passionate on healthcare?
Ady knows that personal stories are an amazing organizing tool to make people believe in a common vision and see the potential of a better world. And he had told those stories around other issues, whether it be Black and brown workers' rights, minimum wage laws, the economic issues that he brought to the Federal Reserve, and many others. But when he was diagnosed, it was his own story. It was his own denial of coverage that he received for a piece of medical equipment that he needed for his ALS. And when that happened to him, he realized that he was one of millions of people being denied coverage for the profits of the health insurance industry and corporations who run it. And that realization that he could bring his own story out as he did with Flake, I think really increased his power. And that's one of the big ironies of the film and of his life, is that this disease, which took away his voice, ended up giving him this incredibly powerful platform, that as his voice diminished, he was able to be heard by millions of more people. As he lost his ability to walk, so many more followed in his footsteps.
Well, healthcare once again is in the headlines as we not only enter COVID season, but also gear up for a contentious presidential election. You mentioned the ACA, commonly called Obamacare. It's obviously still the law of the land. And according to whitehouse.gov, more than 40 million people currently have health care because of the ACA. What are the conversations that you're hearing about this nationally right now?
I would caveat by saying I'm a filmmaker and not a political strategist. But I did spend years following Ady and his team, the Be a Hero Fund, on this issue. And it's important for audiences to know that Be a Hero, Ady's organization, is still very active after his passing and is fighting across these issues as we lead into the 2024 election. And so I strongly encourage audience members who want to know more about Ady's work and Ady's legacy to find the Be a Hero Fund and join their efforts. And again, as we go into this new election, we're seeing that Trump wants to, quote unquote, repeal and replace, as they've tried for many, many years, this law, but not having any plan to replace it with. There's a long journey ahead. Ady was fighting for a much more, much broader, much more universal healthcare system. And I believe that dream is still alive. And I hope that the Biden administration pursues that in their next term.
Well, you mentioned Ady's legacy. He's survived by his wife and 2 children. What do you think Ady would want his lasting legacy to be?
Yeah, that's a very powerful question, and one that I dedicated many years of my life to in making Not Going Quietly to help preserve his legacy. And when he originally agreed to do the film, it was one, I think, to document his legacy because he knew his years would be short, but it was also that he wanted a time capsule for his children, Carl and Willow, to remember him by. And what he told me in an interview that we did recently before his passing was that he agreed to do the film because he wanted his children to know how much he loved them. And he wanted them to know that through his work, even when he was on the road, his work was a way of creating a better world for them and to demonstrate his love through his activism. And I think that's a big part of his message. He said that doing this work was the way that he found joy and meaning in the darkness of ALS. It's one of the worst diagnoses imaginable. And I think all of us, when we look at him, say, well, what would I do? And Ady took this terrible tragedy and turned it into a weapon to fight for a better world for his children and for all of us. And I think what Ady wanted us all to know is beyond healthcare, beyond any single issue, the act of organizing, the act of resistance, the act of banding in community to create a better world is an act of joy. And it's something that we can all find meaning in our own lives through doing. And I think that was his greatest message. And he sits on the shoulders of many great civil rights icons of decades past who taught us this message, who bent the arc a little bit more towards justice. And that's what I believe Ady did. It's certainly the effect he had on me, and I believe millions of others.
Well, Nick, you spent a lot of time with Ady. What do you most hope people listening understand about Ady?
Well, Ady was incredibly funny. He was not all serious all the time. And he, was vulgar and crass and, beyond everything, a real person and an incredibly loving father. And personally, as I enter my own fatherhood journey after making the film, when I think most deeply about him, I think about being the kind of father that he was, not just the kind of activist or organizer. And I think Ady wanted all of us to know that our stories have power. And whether it's a story as tragic as his, or it's any challenge that we face in our life, illness, death, injustice, incarceration, all of these sources of immense pain can also be a source of purpose. They can also be where we draw our inspiration from to shape our society into the one that we want to see and live in. And I hope that when we look at Ady's life, and I hope audiences have a chance to watch Not Going Quietly on Hulu to learn more about him, they all can find the source of inspiration in their own life through his story.
Nick, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your stories of Ady's life.
Thank you. It was a great honor of my life to document Ady's, and an honor to be here and share it with you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.